Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for this webinar on JobsPlus. I'm Elizabeth Gerard, a Deputy Director here at Learning and Work Institute. Learning and Work Institute is an independent policy and research organisation focused on lifelong learning and better work. I'm also joined today by some wonderful speakers who I'll introduce you to shortly. But first, a bit of an introduction to what is JobsPlus. So, JobsPlus is a community-led employment support model being piloted in 10 sites across England. Learning and Work is leading the program, working in collaboration with communities that work and the Institute for Employment Studies, who are leading the evaluation, along with additional support from MDRC, that's the US-based research organisation behind the conception of JobsPlus, but most importantly, our 9 housing associations who are delivering the pilot. Now, there is a clear case for focusing on social housing residents. Our previous research found that they are nearly twice as likely to be out of work as those in other tenures, and these communities are being disproportionately affected by the barriers to work. So, delivering JobsPlus within social housing communities allows us to support this group directly and enables targeted, hyperlocal support. And there is a clear case for JobsPlus, the evidence behind it. In the United States, it has already shown that the partnership between landlords, tenants, and key local agencies leads to better long-term employment outcomes for residents and their children, even 10 years later. So when fully implemented, JobsPlus increased residents' average earnings over 7 years without abatement, and it also demonstrated intergenerational benefits. The children living on JobsPlus sites while the program was being delivered also experienced higher earnings and employment in adulthood compared with their comparison groups. So, to introduce you to the concept, I'll very briefly touch on the 4 key features of the JobsPlus model. The first is on-site employment services. So JobsPlus is delivered in the community within the footprint of the social housing estate, providing a community hub where there is also access to other
Okay then.
services such as employment,
I'm more I'm more
education,
than happy
skills.
to do it. It's
I'm
just
just
as
going to pause here. Thank you for taking care of that. Um, I was saying that there are employment services on site, but also education, skills, childcare, transport, whatever is needed by the community is provided on site in a community hub. So people don't have to go outside of their community to get the support they need. The second key feature is that community support for work. So residents help to shape provision and volunteer to champion engagement and provide peer support to each other. So in the UK model, that looks like community champions and community involvement in governance on each site. Next up, the third key feature is a financial incentive. The UK pilot provides a one-off interwork bonus of £400. So once participants have sustained new employment or self-employment for at least 2 months, they are entitled to that, and that's it in order to make work pay. And then the last key feature is saturation. So there is no complex eligibility criteria to JobsPlus. JobsPlus is open to all residents within the defined neighbourhood, and it's capped at up to 1,000 households on each site. So the model aims to reach saturation levels so that all residents benefit from the program, either directly because they are enrolled and receiving support, or indirectly by building a culture of work within the community. So, JobsPlus in the UK. I'm happy to say that JobsPlus has now been running for over a year in our 10 sites across England. We've got a diagram and list on the screen for you, which I will say is probably a little bit small, but you can find more information on our website about where our sites are. So, I don't want to preempt the full evaluation, which is ongoing for JobsPlus, but the pilot is already showing promising results. We already have over 830 residents having been provided support and almost 200 who have been supported into work. JobsPlus seeks to improve employment outcomes for social housing residents, many of whom are economically inactive, and we have seen that shift at the national government level to focus on economic inactivity and also to focus on these types of locally led solutions with the new Get Britain Working plans, the local provision of Connect to Work, and also the economic inactivity trailblazers in areas of the country. So our hope is that combined authorities, councils, housing providers, and other local actors are able to learn from the trial. By embedding these services within the communities and working in partnership with local organisations, JobsPlus can reach residents who are often underserved by mainstream provision, help advance place-based strategies, and support local priorities around employment and social housing. And now you've heard more than enough from me, and I get the pleasure of introducing our speakers. So I'll let you know who we've got on the panel today and then hand over to them. First up, I've got Lindsay Sweeney, who is the Managing Director at Communities That Work. Lindsay has been a partner since the early days of making the case for this pilot. We also have Tracy Fishwick. Tracy is the Managing Director of Transform Lives company, who deliver the JobsPlus pilot in our Toxteth site in Liverpool. Karen Kilmar, who is Head of Business Growth at the 13 Group, the housing association, who deliver JobsPlus at the Stockton site in Tees Valley. And we also have two of our employment specialists who are actually providing support on the ground with us today. So you'll hear from Lindsay Henry, employability caseworker from 13 Group, and Lee Hayday, employment specialist from L&Q Foundation. And we have joining us today as well, Andrew Schwertsky, Interim Director of Skills and Employment from the East Midlands Combined County Authority, and Adam will share his insights from within a combined authority. So each of the panel will speak for 5 minutes to share their insights, and then we will open it up for a Q&A. So please go ahead and submit your questions as we go, and the panel will answer these at the end. So first, I'd like to invite Lindsay to speak. Thank you, Lindsay.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Elizabeth, for a great intro. Hello, everyone. I'm looking forward to hearing from my fellow panelists very shortly. And thanks, everyone, if you found the time to join us today. I run an organisation called Communities That Work, which is seeking to link social housing with employment support. We've been doing that for about 14, 15 years now. I know I don't look that old, but I have been looking after it for about 10 years. And I'm really pleased that we've got to the stage today where we can talk about Jobs Plus as a living and breathing thing that exists in 10 communities in England. And we as an organisation are England-wide rather than UK-wide, and we're set up and are still driven by social housing providers who care about and want to understand the relationship between social housing and employment support and skills and economic inactivity and activity, and what role they can and should play. So our role at Communities That Work is drawing on all of that experience and knowledge from the social housing sector, from employment service providers, and from the government, and trying to draw those things together and create more and better opportunities for the government to work with social housing, and the government being at all levels, at local, district, and national levels, and social housing to understand its role and the opportunity to engage in employment support for anybody of working age across our communities. So we've been advocating for that role for a long time, for longer than Jobs Plus has been around in England for sure. But we gained very early and quick interest in Jobs Plus back in our foundation years, a good decade ago, because Jobs Plus had an excellent track record in the United States, but also, and really crucially, it was a program that was written and designed in the shape of social housing. And we felt that most other programs, certainly operating across the UK, weren't really written or designed for social housing, or really looking at neighbourhood level responses at that time. They were typically very large geographical contract areas, aiming to work with many thousands or tens of thousands of people at a time. And whilst we understood that, we didn't feel it fitted social housing very well. Jobs Plus was the opposite of that. It felt like it fitted really well, and we've therefore got behind it and lobbied and advocated for the implementation of Jobs Plus as a trial, as a pilot for many years. And I'm very pleased that after a few times of asking and in strong cooperation with colleagues from the DWP, we were able to get that over the line, and these pilots now exist in 10 neighbourhoods in England. And I'm sure, I'm looking forward to hearing from just a few voices who are running and are very deeply involved in some of those pilots. And I hope that you'll get a lot from hearing from them about why it has value and why we're backing Jobs Plus. The key points for us, and I'll keep this really brief, are since we liked the look of Jobs Plus, several pieces of research have shown, and including Building Opportunity, our own research that was launched post-COVID, that clearly social housing tenants and residents are more likely to experience economic inactivity as well as unemployment, to earn less in work, and to have a lower skills level. These are long-term and persistent issues that the sector wants to solve. Jobs Plus is part of that solution. It's not going to be everything for everyone, but it's absolutely neighbourhood driven, and it's working with people who are further from the labour market, who are less likely to walk into a Job Centre Plus or any other type of support, and who are nonetheless ready and willing to engage with support that fits them and that's in their neighbourhood. We know the 80% employment rate is reaching for the government. That's another 1.5 million people in work than are in work today. We know that the majority of people that need support into work are in social housing, and we stand ready as a sector to work with Learning and Work, with IES, with the DWP and JCP to do as much as we can to reach our communities and support them towards meaningful, long-term, sustainable employment that really does transform lives. So we've always been about that. We're ever more convinced that JobsPlus Plus is part of the solution, and we know that we have a considerable mountain to climb in terms of reaching the number of people that the government has laid out in its ambition in Get Britain Working and in the devolution agenda to work and operate locally. So I'm going to leave it there, and I'll look forward to questions coming from audience or possibly other panelists. And I'll look forward to hearing from our next speaker, if that's all right.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Lindsay, and then a great message there at the end. Next up, I'll invite Tracy. Thank you, Tracy.
Okay, hi everyone. I'm really, really pleased to be involved in this session today, and I really honestly don't know how I'm going to cover everything in 5 minutes, so it will be whistle stop, and I'm happy to answer questions either at the end or another time. So I've been involved in employment and skills since the late 90s, really, and from a public sector point of view, working in local government. And I think getting involved in Jobs Plus in the last couple of years has felt like almost going back to some of the things that we were learning then with Neighbourhood Renewal Fund, Working Neighbourhoods Fund, and this kind of thing that has disappeared. And that infrastructure and the glue in communities that we've seen, I think, disappear around not only employment, but a lot of other support in favour of big sweeping regional contracts. And I think, there's a place for most things, but this has certainly been something that is long overdue. Transform Lives, we're a small social enterprise, but we feel very much the same as and part of the Plus Dane team, which is our housing association that is anchoring this project. We're in Toxteth, which is about a half an hour's walk to the city centre, where there are many, many, many jobs. However, it is an area where, there are significant challenges around unemployment, economic inactivity, and the NEET rates. And I won't go over the rationale that has been brilliantly explained already by Lindsay to set us up for this conversation. But in terms of our experience of getting this off the ground and what we've learned, I'll just try and focus on a few things in the time. This is about, for us, establishing a no wrong door in the heart of a community in a very small hub, which is the downstairs of a house. You don't need a lot of space, where people feel comfortable and confident in coming in. So the antithesis of a job centre with bouncers on the door, big buildings, bit scary, and obviously quite anxiety inducing for a lot of people to even think about going there. I think some of the things that we're learning is around that the language that we've got even is, we're engaging with communities. And I think what we're trying to do is be the community. And when you think about that perspective, it does actually make you think differently about everything that you do, from who you hire into the team. How do they represent the community that you're in? Do they understand the place, the story of the place that we are in? That we are not parachuting in as a project, and we, that is one thing that we do worry about a lot. So we've thought long and hard about the kind of skill sets that the people need, and it is very much about, it's not location, location, location. It's outreach, outreach, outreach. Employment skilled and qualified people who know how to do that part of the job, but they also are just as comfortable of being out, knocking on people's doors, going to community events, striking up conversations in the community, and doing anything we can possibly do to engage and meet people. And that's the hardest part of this project is, if we cast out information around, come and get this help from us, it's all around jobs, we might get 2 people that respond to an invitation like that. If we say, come and pick up a bag of food in the winter months, or like we did 2 weeks ago, come and get a free ice cream, 120 people came in an hour for a free ice cream. That is well worth the engagement that we get then from that, in terms of trying to engage people in conversations and register them for what we're doing. I think it's also about being willing to make decisions that are based on what your gut is telling you about the place that you're in. So that has meant for us, like, really thinking about not using some of the national guidance, because it just is not going to translate in our area. So that might be a case of what's the saying? Easier to ask for forgiveness than permission. But we found that popping a postcard with a piece of toast into people's doors is much better than putting a fancy leaflet with a lovely glossy image on and all about jobs. Doesn't work in Toxteth. So you've got to be prepared for the slow burn. You've got to be prepared for the community involvement. You've got to be thinking about how we work through local people, which for us is that there's a very tactical response that we're making around working with community champions to ask them to talk to their neighbours, not us trying to talk to everybody. So there's a whole raft of things that it makes you think about doing differently. And I'm happy to maybe explore some of that further with you, conscious of time. There's so much more we can say.
Yeah, you've done a fabulous job of distilling it down, Tracy, because I know that your team is just doing such fabulous work on the ground. And next we get to hear from another one of our sites with Karen. Karen, over to you.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep, perfect. We can hear you, Karen.
Good. I don't know why my camera's not on for some reason, so I'll see what I can do. Oh, there we go. Hi. Thanks for that, Tracy. I've had to cross off a load of stuff, so I'm not duplicating what you've said. So it's pretty much great that we've all got quite a consistent approach to this. But I think from my point of view, and again, running employability provisions for a number of years, very community driven. I think what we found in Stockton, where our sort of pilot site is that what we've done, and obviously driving this forward, is gone for that really multi-agency approach as well, because it's not just about 13 as a housing association going in and embedding themselves in the community. It's about that bigger picture and that bigger offer. We've been really lucky in Stockton to have a real good collaborative approach. So we've got JobsPlus that co-locates on our High Street office 2 or 3 times a week, offering advice on UC claims, but also meeting their UC customers that wouldn't normally go to the job centre, coming into the branch, into the site, and starting to talk to the employability caseworkers, and also offer support around childcare. We've got Barclays Bank that come in that support people who don't have bank accounts, but also run mini workshops around fraud and scam, those sort of things, but also then looking at the colleges coming in. And again, there's a barrier of some people going into a college, so the college come to them and they talk about and promote their apprenticeship programs, their funded boot camps, their funded training. We have someone going in that offers functional skills, and all of that really supports the sort of the needs of that community, but also around the other local priorities in the area. So the area that we chose for this pilot was very much one of our community resilience strategy areas, because it's got very high antisocial behaviour, a lot of unemployment, low skills, a lot of crime. So again, working with that multi-agency approach, the police, the crime commissioner, has really helped us to embed ourselves in that, not just as a housing association. And I think just touching on what Tracy said there, is it's about listening to what the estate and the neighbourhood want, and not what we assume they will need, which is what on the big sort of national employability provisions is. It's about, actually, we'll tell you what we think you want, and we'll put you on this training course, and we'll get you to do this qualification, and we're going to put you into this job. It's not about that. It's about what they want, what they're asking us to bring in, what's their aspirations, and then bringing in those organisations, those partners that actually will help them move their aspiration forward, whether that be volunteering, whether that be training, whether that be actually looking to move into work. And having those community champions, I think, is integral to that, because, as Tracy said, they are the voice of the community. They're the ones that will come to us and listen, but then take that information back out to the community. So I think having this as a housing association approach is, we're there as a landlord and we're an anchor institution. We're not going anywhere, but this different saturated approach and this is true collaborative working and true partnership working is really driven the community within the estate that we're working out of to actually come together. And I'm sure Lindsay will touch on her experience of delivering front face, very much on the cold face of that estate, of how this different way of working and different way of engaging has actually really driven that community to know what's going on, bringing all of those providers into one place rather than have that sort of disjointed approach, but delivering what they want us to deliver. And I think that's where, I think on any reflection of any other employability provisions that I've been involved in, this is very much community driven and not housing driven, although housing does play a massive part. They see us as a housing provider, but now they see us as, actually, you're not just our landlord, you're not just within our community, you can offer me a plethora of opportunities, accessibility, and actually coming into the office again to talk to Job Centre Plus rather than go into an office, getting the college to come to us rather than them going to the college, and the banks coming into us rather than them go to the bank, I think is really broaden people's people on that estate that actually I can't approach the banks and the colleges and job centre. And we'll leave it at that because I'm conscious I'm running out of time. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. That was a brilliant snapshot of the element of that support being provided in the community and by the community. And to keep it in the Toxteth area, we'll now hand over to Lindsay Henry, one of our employability specialists in the area.
Hi, so I'm Lindsay. I am an employability caseworker at 13 Group in Stockton. I wanted to share really sort of my perspective on things with regards to JobsPlus. I've worked in welfare to work now for around about 15 years, probably a little bit more. So I have worked on a lot of employment provision. But what I feel like and what I enjoy the most about JobsPlus is the time. So it's the time that we get to give to people. I just think in previous contracts that I've worked on, I felt a little bit like we're sort of pushing people through, and it's a little bit like a production line, and it's next, who's next? But with JobsPlus, it's not like that. We've got the time, we've got the resource to dedicate to people. And like Karen and Tracy have both touched on, we use our community hubs. So we're bringing people into the hubs because it's in their community, like Karen's talked about with the co-location partners that we use, and like we've already mentioned with the community champions. JobsPlus for me is all about the community. It's all about giving the people from the community a voice, and that's exactly what we've done. So they tell us what they want to see on in their community, and then we sort of bring it to life. So we've done things like we've run fun days, we've made events, we've had a talent show, we've had Santa's grottos, we've done like a little event fair, if you like. But we've done all of this because this is what the champions on the estate told us that people wanted on the estate. So a little bit like when we were talking about, or when Tracy was mentioned, little glossy leaflets through letterboxes, they don't work in Stockton either. But what does work in Stockton is the community telling the community what's going on. So a few months ago, they asked for a certain training course. So we ran it in a local community centre that's just at the end of the road of one of the estates that we're working on. And I feel for those customers, what they were so excited about is that they were going to do a training course that they were interested in. They were asking the friends or the neighbours or their aunties or whatever to go on to the training with them. And then they were getting a course that they wanted on their terms. So then when I was saying to them, there's a certain college in our hub, do you want to come along and come and chat to them? I think it sort of empowered them a little bit to feel like, do you know what, I've already done a course. Yeah, actually, I do. I will do it. And it's helped them bring their own confidence. Then it's made them sort of go to their own families and say, or friends, and say, well, I've worked with her. Do you want me to come with you? So I encourage that. I'll say to people, if you've got somebody, your neighbour, your auntie, whoever it is, bring them with you. And you can come at the appointment with them until obviously they feel comfortable enough with me to be able to work with me on their own. And that sort of leads me into another thing again, why it's different. A few months ago, I had a young lad come through the door and said to me, well, his mum actually said to me, I've brought my son, he wants an apprenticeship. So they came in. He had the apprentice. I got him an apprenticeship. The mum then decided that she wanted to sign up with me. She signed up. A couple of weeks later, she ended up with a job. She then said, "Can I bring my sister?" So the sister came. She's ended up with a job. And then she said, my son leaves school in June. He doesn't turn 16 until August. But can he come? The day after his 16th birthday, I signed him up as well. We've done a few applications, and we've just done an application for the army. So I feel as though the community connection, the family connection, that's what works. It's the time and it's the trust that people have in us because of obviously who we are and what we do. Thank you.
That's brilliant, Lindsay. A real great case study of the community support for work and the way that word of mouth generates its own referrals where people are able to share the success stories that they've had. And now I'll invite Lee to share his own perspectives. from the
Lindsay,
L&Q
you
side.
stole a bit of my thunder there, but yeah, I think that the overarching emphasis on Jobs Plus is time, and I'll go into that in a little bit later. So I'm Lee Hayday. I'm an employment support lead for L&Q. So L&Q is one of the biggest social landlords in the country. And one of the 10 pilots is in the Seddon Centre, which is in Leighton, supporting residents of the Beaumont Estate. We've got 600 units on the Beaumont Estate. Um, so my background, I've been in recruitment and training and teaching for 35 years. So if we're looking at what's the differentials between Jobs Plus to other programs I've worked on, so that's inclusive of sort of New Deal 18 to 24, New Deal 25 plus, New Deal for disabled, and then work choice, and then the work program, and then the work and health program. I was actually approached to uh, come onto the Jobs Plus program about a year and a half ago, and it was really like a breath of fresh air. So I've worked for L&Q for 7 years. I've always worked in Waltham Forest. So we, in essence, prior to Jobs Plus, we're a provider of choice with DWP. But what I find different about this program, and it was a learning curve for us at the start, it's community based. It's getting to know the community. And I think just to resonate what Lindsay said, it's not this is our offer, it's what do you want from us? And I think, you need to get embedded within that community. And I think there's specific examples that we can use. So I registered a father that was eligible on the Beaumont estate. He obviously thought, well, you sort of know what you're doing. Can you look after my daughter? Can you provide support for my daughter? I think what you wanted me to talk about is the transition and the sort of growth in the people that have come on the program and how they've gone post sort of job offer. So this particular person, this young person was Maruna. She was 18. She'd never had a job. She was very inward. She was very quiet. She looked quite fairly nervous in my sort of company. But she wanted to do an apprenticeship. She turned up for appointments on time. She responded to emails. She was very proactive. She was open to learn. She was open to ideas. We had an interview for her for an apprenticeship for an insurance company in the city, which unfortunately she was unsuccessful for. And then we actually work in partnership with Waltham Forest Council. So they had an opportunity for an apprenticeship working at City Hall as a business admin apprentice within the Mayor of London. As you can imagine, this is where the time thing comes in. So the application process probably took me and Maruna probably 3 different sessions over 3 different days to complete because of the sort of arduous nature of it. But she got through to a preliminary selection. She had a first interview, a second interview. She got offered the job. And 4 months later, she walks in my office for a cup of tea when she has a day off. And that person is completely transfixed and transformed into a blossoming, confident person. I think that just resonates what Jobs Plus is about. And I think if we're making those sort of interventions and we're making those life-changing support mechanisms work for our residents, I think that's in essence is what we're all about. So we're based at the Seddon Centre in Leighton. Again, not just around employment. We put on now 3 what we call Neighbourhood Unite Fun Days, which we promote effectively through our community development team, as well as me and my colleague Mohammed going putting leaflets through doors and sending out text messages. So that's for the whole family of the Beaumont estate and the wider community. So we have a DJ, we have food and drinks, we have a supply chain involved with presents, activities for children like treasure hunts, face painting, balloon making, etc. And then what we can do is myself, Mohammed and Harper, we talk about Jobs Plus to everybody that's attending. And if they're not interested, maybe they know somebody else on the estate that is. Every month we do a Meet the Team event, which we bring in our employer engagement team. So residents can come and talk about their sort of employment opportunities that they want to look at and get some experience from my colleague Abra, who deals with our employer engagement network. And last week we did our first Meet the Employer event, which we're going to do every month for like a sector-based one. So this month was around health and social care. So again, we effectively marketed the that event to the estate. So I'm very passionate about what I do. I'm from the local area, and I mean we've got some great outcomes. If you want to look on the Inside Housing website, we've just got a fairly substantial positive article about the work that we do. So yeah, long may it continue.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Lee. And if you do take a look at that that article, you'll see that the example that Lee shared is just one of the many kind of lives that he's touched in terms of building confidence and helping people into work. He's a superstar. All right. And then last but not least, I'd like to hand over to Adam. Adam, over to you.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Elizabeth, and thanks for inviting me to join. It's been so good to hear about the experience with JobsPlus. My perspective is the Interim Director of Skills and Employment at a relatively new combined authority, at the East Midlands Combined County Authority, which doesn't have JobsPlus, but what we do have is a broad and growing programme around economic inactivity. So very brief introduction to the East Midlands Combined Authority, known as EMCA. We cover Derbyshire and Nottinghamshire, plus the two cities, just over 2 million people, but 1.5 million, just under 1.5 million working age. And we have about 280,000 people who are economically inactive, around a third of those because of a health issue. We've also got 80,000 16 to 24-year-olds who are NEET, so some significant challenges to tackle. But we also have some really big strengths in the region and some really strong economic potential, including in some of those big industrial strategy sectors like nuclear and advanced manufacturing and life sciences. It's a really exciting week for us. We just launched the report of the Inclusive Growth Commission, which was a commission that our mayor set up, led by the RSA, looking at how can we achieve for the region an inclusive growth strategy over the next few years. And there are some key recommendations in that report that are really relevant to the work, particularly in skills and employment. One was to have a youth ambition, all about building aspiration and providing support for that transition into work. And the second was around an opportunity escalator, which is around helping people to take steps to go from where they are to both access work and then progress into higher paying jobs. Really all about making sure that the economic growth that we're targeting is benefiting everybody. We are putting together a significant package around tackling economic inactivity in the region, and that will all fall under our Get East Midlands Working Plan, which is our local version of the Get Britain Working Plan. And we've pulled that together through a really strong partnership across both the Combined Authority, our local authorities in the region, DWP, our NHS partners, our education partners in the voluntary sector. And I think a lot of what you've heard today is around the importance of partnership working as a way of supporting people into work. And we certainly believe in that from a strategic level. And the fundamental challenge we're trying to tackle is that to hit the government's national target of 80% people in work, we have to support 60,000 more people in the region to find jobs. But there are only 40,000 vacancies. So that just underlines the importance of driving growth and supporting businesses to expand. And also some of our big employment programs that we're developing, like Connect to Work, will only deliver a fraction of the job outcomes that we need in order to hit that 80% total. So for us, what that really underlines is the importance of working as a system and attacking the problem from more fronts. And just bringing that home in terms of JobsPlus, that means having some really major flagship programs that are going to support those tens of thousands of people into work, but also making sure that we've got some targeted efforts in place for specific groups. So if you look, for example, those with health issues, we're building Connect to Work as our major intervention. That's going to be a really strong partnership with health to make sure there are pathways for people who are engaged with the health service to find employment as well, and make sure that we really change the system so that work is seen as an outcome for health and well-being. And it means connecting with the NHS and public health on employment programs that are led through the health system, like individual placement and support in mental health services, for example. And then for young people, which is another really important group for us, we're one of the 8 combined authorities chosen to be a youth guarantee trailblazer. So that's really bringing together our system partners, particularly around FE and the local authorities, to provide targeted support, as well as engaging employers to make sure that there are more inclusive pathways into work. So from our perspective, where my Jobs Plus fit, well, I'm thinking in particular to tackling the challenge of some really major disparities in the region. So for example, you've got South Derbyshire, 83% in work, less than 4% unemployed. In Ashfield, a former coal mining community, you've got 72% employed and over 9% unemployed. And that really underlies, the stark differences within the region. Some communities really experiencing significant challenges around inactivity, and you've got households that have multiple generations out of work. So that really demonstrates the need, as we've heard today, to embed employment support in those communities. We're very much leading on the agenda in the East Midlands around economic activity, and we would love to participate in future phases, pilots around this kind of programme. Elizabeth.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Adam. And you've tied it up nicely with a bow there in terms of how this type of support can help other communities, because this is particularly targeted at and intended to support those ones who are facing those additional systemic intergenerational barriers. So we are now onto the QA portion of the webinar today, and please feel free, you can continue to use the Q&A function to submit your questions. We have some in there already, and I think this first one is likely a question for Karen and Tracy. So the question that we have, what are the tips for finding the best venue in the heart of the community, especially if an area doesn't necessarily have a ready-made community building or community centre but you want to bring people together? Now here I would say across our 10 sites you've almost got 10 different approaches. So there has been some creativity there, but Karen, Tracy, how did you go about finding the right spot within your communities to host?
I think from Stockton's point of view, we have a high street presence. We have a very customer-facing office where people come in to either discuss housing issues or want to register to become a 13 tenant. And at the back of that building, we've got a bigger employability area, private training rooms, one-to-one pods, etc. And it's within sort of a 10-minute walk from the estate. So initially it was, well, we've already got a presence. It's on a very busy high street. All the bus routes come in from that estate. So we thought, well, we've already got a presence, but then obviously once we can get people's trust as we start to look at what's going on in their communities, and if there is community venues, then it's a case of having those discussions and finding the best place. So we've been quite lucky within that area that there is already a community centre. However, I think Lindsay will agree, it wasn't a very active community centre, wasn't very well used. So we've sort of took that into them. And I can understand if there's not an area where they've got a community centre, it's having somewhere within 5-10 minute walking distance. That's the whole point about Jobs Plus. It's got to be very locally based, because people tend to want to stay in sort of within a 20-minute sort of walking distance of where they live. So it's maybe finding somewhere that's nearby, but not necessarily embedded right into that neighbourhood.
Yep. In terms of our hub in Toxteth, we literally have the downstairs of a terraced house that was already converted by Plus Stay in Housing into a little community hub. So, you know, it had the little kitchen and things like that already in. I think what we've done is personalise it a bit more, make it feel a bit warmer, a bit more friendly, trying to get plants and different things like that. So almost like it feels like your front room rather than, you know, a place with lots of desks and, you know, everyone like sitting in a row or anything like that. It's not at all like that. If you've not got that, I think, and I don't think it needs to be necessarily owned by the housing association. I think it's about thinking about the place and where do people like to go. And if there are, you know, different types of venues like children's centre or the food pantry or, you know, any kind of community place that is a natural go-to, then I would think about starting with those places and seeing whether or not you can put in employment advice amongst that. Because what you tend to see is a lot of those kind of community venues, but there's no one in there that's got employment skill advice. So actually it just goes missing all the time. And what we've got to think about doing is getting that skill set into places more often and thinking about that social housing area and what makes sense for those people.
Mm. And having visited your site, Tracy, you feel like you're just popping into a neighbour's for a cup of tea, and then there is a conversation that leads towards work. So yeah, definitely removing those barriers.
Well, it also as well, like you literally could be coming in for a cup of tea. Nobody needs to know your business.
Yeah.
Because people don't want everyone knowing your business, do they? So what I wish we had, if I was doing it again or opening up another one, ideally, food is king. Like if you can make people cups of tea, if you can provide lunch and things like that, you know, so that's why we've ended up with the ice cream van, getting the chip van and all of this parked outside. But if we could have food on site, I think, you know,
always a draw card.
It's a real leveler. Yeah, definitely.
Brilliant. The next question, and Lee, I'm interested to hear your thoughts here, just following up on that employer day that you were talking about. The next question here is, how supportive are local employers? So what has been the experience there? Are they willing to adjust jobs to support people who might have additional barriers to work, like healthcare needs or childcare needs? So any reflections on that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously through L&Q as a social landlord, there's a lot of organisations as subcontractors that feed into L&Q. So you've got like Morgan Sindall, for example, Durkin, for example. And obviously through the work that Abra does, who's our employer engagement lead, he will actually work with those supply chain organizations with the caveat of, you know, it's imperative that wherever possible, vacancies you do have, you're going to be taking people from ourselves and our residents, because obviously that's the way it works. So from his point of view, yes, he does try and sort of broaden the church of a job spec, which, you know, sometimes can be so narrow, which is actually probably not written by a line manager. It's probably written by somebody in a different department, which actually sometimes is not fillable at all. So yeah, I think the answer to your question is that is in operation. Is it as wide as we would like it to be? Probably not.
Yeah, wondering if we have other reflections from maybe Toxteth or Stockton there about the engagement with employers.
I agree with Lee a little bit. So there's with us, obviously, with 13, obviously with us being a landlord, we do have vacancies within our own company, and obviously we have placed customers in, whether it be in our call centre, whether it be in apprenticeship, whether it be within admin. We have done a few. We've gone around all the local employers just to try and gauge their buy-in and explain to them who we are and what we do. What we found most useful, really, when we talked about community champions and sort of voices on the estate, there's a couple of businesses on the estate. So there's a hairdresser's, there's a cafe, there's a chip shop, there's a Royal Mail sorting office. We've gone into them, we've made them business champions. So what we've done is we've talked to them about who we are and what we do. and promoted sort of the benefits of JobsPlus and promoted the benefits of if somebody only lives a few doors down from you, they're probably not going to be late. The train's never going to be delayed. The bus is never going to break down. They're not going to run out of petrol. This type of good stuff. So some of that works. But again, like Lee says, I would like more. We have tried to sort of saturate the employers as well around and say like use us. And some of them, don't get me wrong, they do come. They do come to us and sort of say, can we advertise the job through you? Because it's free to do it through us. And potentially we might already have somebody sat there who might meets their criteria perfectly. But obviously there's always room for more, isn't there?
Yeah.
Always room for more.
Mhm.
Tracy,
Just
were you going to join? Yeah,
Yeah,
go
just
for it.
to say a couple of things that we did was I was obsessed at the beginning with having a jobs board in the hub. I know might sound well to the younger members of our team, they thought that was really old-fashioned as an idea. Like, you've got to put bits of cardboard on a board with jobs on, but it actually gets a lot of interest from people just sort of browsing. I think we've taken away that self-efficacy from people around. I've seen this job and I'm going to ask, like, what about this? Can I apply for this? The old-fashioned way of being in a job centre. And I think that's really interesting. And we're just sort of watching how that goes. And I've lost my train of thought about jobs. The other one was there's a £400 incentive in this model, and I'd like to see what comes out in the national evaluation because that's due quite soon, isn't it? But from our experience, most people who've gained a job have not qualified for that £400. So that's interesting that actually it's not been the thing that's got people over the line to take a job to go. It's helped some people, but by no means, it is the minority. It's about 6 people out of about 25. So I think that's really interesting, and I'd like to see how that pans out. It is a pilot and we're learning, aren't we?
Exactly right. And that's a good teaser for the interim evaluation report, which
Welcome.
people can see later on. I was interested there, kind of piggybacking off Lindsay's comments about how trying to reach that saturation of the employers in your area, which also linked to Adam's points about you've got to also, if you want these people to move into work, you've got to grow the jobs there for them. And the role of local council, combined authority, whatever it might be, in providing a connection there. How are sites working with local government? Where does it work well? Where are the challenges? Who wants to be brave?
If I may.
Go for it, Lee.
So, as I said, we work in partnership with London Borough of Waltham Forest. So I work with the fantastic Harpel Raw, who prior to JobsPlus I've worked with for 6 years or so. So just a live example. So within Waltham Forest, it used to be called the Olympic Boroughs, one of the Olympic boroughs. So you've got surrounding areas. So there's still a collective of where LA share vacancies. So a resident for L&Q Erdie, and the vacancy came from London Borough of Waltham Forest, which was a Barts NHS 4-week healthcare programme. Without keeping for too long, Erdie completed the 4-week unpaid placement in various departments in Whipps Cross and Barts, and on August the 25th started as a senior healthcare assistant at Barts and St Paul's on a full-time basis, and was previously unemployed for 3 years. So that partnership working, the job came from the council, and obviously, we work in tandem together. So that I think is a real good live example of how the two organisations can work for the benefit of the community.
Brilliant. A really practical example there again about the co-location and collaboration. Karen, I see your hands up.
Yeah, I think from a Tees Valley Combined Authority area, they have been and visited the site and spoken to the people that are on the programme. They've spoke to community champions, they've spoken to the staff. They've got a real sort of feel for what JobsPlus is and how different it is. And it's very much under the spotlight within Tees Valley Combined Authority, as it is with the North East Combined Authority, even though we're not delivering in the North East. because it is such a different provision. It's very saturated, it's very place-based, it's very cohort-driven. It is jobs for me, and I'm not saying this is what it is, but this could be the way to influence how some of the combined authorities will think about future DEVO funding, and whether it will be very place-based approach rather than have a Tees Valley wide, very cohort-driven. So I know certainly in the Tees Valley area, it's very much under the spotlight by the combined authority, with the combined authority, but in a very positive way. They're wanting updates all the time of how's it going, what sort of how many people have moved into work, what's the sustainability around that. So I think, yeah, certainly in Tees Valley, I think it is. But Lindsay works very closely with Stockton Borough Council. They have an employment hub right behind our site, and they run loads of training and have employers coming in, they share vacancies. So actually, Lindsay will refer people into some of the Stockton Borough Council's employment team. So again, it is that very much that being very transparent, being very trustworthy, but being very collaborative as well in saying, actually, it's JobsPlus, but we're not holding everyone with us. It's wherever that person fits best or whatever suits them, because it's about them, not about us putting bums on seats. So that's certainly in Stockton. Lindsay works really closely with Stockton Borough Council, and I constantly liaise with Tees Valley Combined Authority, and shout out the North East Combined Authority as well when I get the chance.
Brilliant. And another good example, which I think is a theme across our sites, JobsPlus being complementary to other provision, not competing with it, because it can be received alongside whatever else might be happening in that local area. Now, we have almost run out of time, and I've seen lots of other fabulous questions come in, and there are some that I can really easily ask in just a few seconds. So a few questions there about where is the funding coming from for JobsPlus. So we are very happy and grateful to receive funding from DWP and from the Youth Futures Foundation to enable us to deliver and evaluate JobsPlus for year 2. There has also been questions about, how do I get a JobsPlus in my area? And to that I say, get in contact with me. We'd be happy to hear from other areas who would like to know more about the model, how it can be applied elsewhere, and what the future of JobsPlus might look like. Another super quick question I could answer is, how long does a job need to be sustained for someone to be able to qualify for the bonus? And that's sustaining it for 2 months. There was another question about what percentage of people are staying in work once they are in work. And the answer there is see the evaluation, which is coming shortly. So I could keep going on forever about JobsPlus, but I will have to wrap it up here and bring us to a close. But I hope that you've found the session useful, and it's maybe sparked some ideas for how JobsPlus could be helpful in other parts of the UK. But before I wrap up, a few things to share. So, as I've teased a few times, we are partnering with the Institute for Employment Studies, who are leading the implementation and process evaluation of the pilot. And that report will be launched with a webinar in early November, but published online earlier than that. And you can use this handy dandy QR code to scan and find out more information about it. Then to respond to those questions about you'd like to know more about the JobsPlus model and how it can be applied in your local area, please reach out to Learning and Work. I am always happy and willing to preach the gospel of JobsPlus and share which parts of the model can be very easily applied elsewhere. So if you would like to find out more about our work here at Learning and Work Institute, not just on JobsPlus, but across the labour market and skills issues, you can, again, use this QR code or the website on screen to find out more and become a supporter for free. Thank you so much for joining us. And a particular big thank you for our speakers who have been so generous with their time and insights today. Take care, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye.